Tuesday's training camp practice was the shortest practice of training camp so far for the Colts. So this video gonna be a little quicker than the other training camp updates. And with that said, let's start with the obvious. It's Anthony Richardson. Because today he was named the starter for week one for the Indianapolis Colts, and that which felt inevitable, right? Just felt like they all said he needed to get reps to get better. So it just felt like as long as he didn't have a complete disaster in week one of the preseason, there was a good chance he was going to be the week one starter. And they already made that decision. I thought they'd make that decision after joint practices in week two at the Bears, but Shane Steichen is already on it and already made that decision. And today in practice, Anthony Richardson was 9 for 12 with a nice 30-yard ball to Alec Pierce in the end zone for a touchdown. It was a 30-yard comeback route, threw it up, basically a jump ball, and Alec Pierce was able to go get it. And with his performance today in camp, it just feels like after being named the starter and having the experience of being in an NFL game on Saturday, it's like he came into this practice, just more relaxed and like, okay, now I know I'm the guy. I need to be the leader of this team. And he knows that there's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders to lead this team. And what he did today was great, being 9 for 12 with the touchdown. Like, can't ask for much better. It's one of his best days of practice so far. Again, it was a short practice, but definitely one of his best days of practice so far. And going forward, the Bears are coming to town. It's going to be joint practices for the next 2 days from 6 to 8 p.m. And those joint practices are going to be great for Anthony Richardson's development. He's going to be able to see a different defense for 2 days in practice. Okay, 2 hours with a new defense. Like, this is exactly what he needs, right? And then obviously the preseason game later in the week, but being able to work on stuff against a different defense, like the stats the next couple days in practice might not be great. Okay, but practice is where you work on things. Practice is where you take chances that you wouldn't take in a game. So why the stats might not be great, and we might be talking about, not the greatest day for Anthony Richardson at practice the next couple days. What we really want to see is he taking those chances? Is he trying to make the plays, or is it now that he's a starter and he's seeing these new defenses, is he gonna, try to back off of it a little bit and take away from what he is? Okay, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. We're not in the regular season yet, so it's not full blown go, but they're going to want these guys to compete. The Bears and the Colts both, like, these are going to be physical practices. Both of these coaches are going to want their guys to compete. So there's going to be a chance for Anthony Richardson to really make some noise over the next couple days. And again, that experience that he's going to get from these practices, like, that's everything right now. He needs all the experience he can get, all the reps he can get, especially against different defenses that aren't his own. So very excited for what we're going to see. Now, obviously, with the practices being so late, I'm not going to be able to get you guys videos until the next day of those practices, but those will be out in the morning that'll be Thursday and Friday. Now, another thing coming out of today's practice is that Josh Downs was running with the first team offense today, while Isaiah McKenzie was running with the second team offense. Now, as I've said since the very beginning of everything, like the moment we got Josh Downs, I've said him being a starter is inevitable. Okay, this dude is just different with the ball in his hands. Okay, and cream rises to the top. I've probably said that 18 times over the 3 weeks of this channel being a thing. And Josh Downs, he's too good, man. He's too good not to have on the field. There's a reason that every return after the first return of the game on Saturday, it was Josh Downs. Like, he's so good and he's so shifty. He's fast. And so having him on the field is going to be great. And having him and with his relationship with Anthony Richardson, there's a chance that they form something really dynamic. Okay. And somebody that is probably going to be more dynamic with Anthony Richardson and a chance for even bigger play with Anthony Richardson this year is going to be Alec Pierce. Okay. Alec Pierce has been Anthony Richardson's favorite target throughout all of training camp. Okay, they keep trying to work on the deep ball. He keeps trying to work on getting the deep ball pass to the back shoulder for Alec Pierce. Like, they are actively working on getting down the field together. So I'm getting the vibe that Alec Pierce, even though he's going to be lined up as a number 2 wide receiver for us this year, I think he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on this team. For as good as Michael Pittman Jr. is and everything that he brings, like, Alec Pierce can do everything that Michael Pittman Jr. can do, but he has more elite speed. He's more elite athletically. right? If Alec Pierce can hone in on the fundamentals better, then it's really not even close, right? Like he had a bad drop on Saturday. Alec Pierce did, but as long as that's not a normal thing, right? As long as he makes it a normal thing to catch with his hands, as I'm sure Reggie Wayne has been getting on him all week about bringing that in with his hands, like it just seems like Alec Pierce could end up as one of the top wide receivers in the NFL in 2023. Okay, he is that good right now. And Anthony Richardson loves throwing him the deep ball, right? And with the deep ball comes yards and touchdowns. So I expect Alec Pierce to get peppered with targets this year. And I think that, there's a good chance end of the year, Michael Pittman Jr., we let him move on as we keep, Alec Pierce and Josh Downs going into the future. Okay, so the last offensive note that I have here for you is going to be Gardner Minshew and how he did today. Obviously, he's going to be the second string quarterback. We're probably going to talk less about Gardner Minshew, but I think it's important to note that today he had maybe his worst day of practice. He was 5 for 9, had an interception, and you have to assume that it was because he was distracted with the emotions of not having the opportunity to start week 1. Now, of course, he's going to be making $3.5 million to hold a clipboard, right? And of course, if anything happens to Richardson, we have Minshew. But for the most part, and for all intents and purposes, Anthony Richardson not going to be getting hurt. So Gardner Minshew staying on the team, I think, can be a really good thing for Anthony Richardson. And I'm kind of hoping that, even though it's probably not likely because Gardner Minshew's going to want to go somewhere where he might be able to get a starting opportunity at some point, like I hope we find a way to keep Gardner Minshew in the building so we can keep him with Anthony Richardson the way Sorgi was with Peyton for so long. Like quarterbacks have talked, and Peyton always talked about how having Jim Sorgi was so important because Jim Sorgi knew how to talk to Peyton. He knew what he needed to study so that Peyton didn't have to study certain things, right? Like they worked together to figure out the game plan going into Sundays. And I think it'd be great to see, the Colts be able to find a guy like that for Anthony Richardson. I think Gardner would probably be maybe the best guy to have like that in the NFL, of all the guys that are backup quarterbacks. So I hope Gardner Minshew stays a Colt for the rest of his career. Again, not likely to happen, but Colts Nation freaking loves Gardner Minshew. I hope somebody in the organization sees this at some point and lets them know, like, hey, man, Colts Nation absolutely loves you. We're sorry that this isn't the opportunity you were looking for, but if you wanted to stay forever, we'd certainly love to have you forever. Okay, so with that said, I want to talk a little bit of defense before we get out of here. An important note, okay, yesterday we had the video talking about how Ronnie Harrison and another safety were signed for the Colts. The backup safeties did not have a good showing in Saturday's preseason game. So the Colts worked out 4 safeties. They signed 2 of them. And today we got Julian Blackmon making his training camp debut and Rodney Thomas also coming back. So having, the starters there is a good thing. Kenny Moore was also back in practice. So secondary getting much better. And Anthony Richardson was, again, had his best day of practice. So that's great news, right? But, talking about that defense, I put starters in air quotes because the starters for today at safety were actually Rodney Thomas and Nick Cross. And I think that makes sense, right? When you look at Julian Blackmon and his injury history, and then you look at Nick Cross and how he's coming into his own, it just makes sense to give Blackmon limited reps. Okay, but I think the key for this defense and the key for Blackmon is going to be making sure you're giving him the right reps, right? Like he's so talented and he has the ability to be one of the best safeties in the league. He just can't stay on the field. But when he is healthy, like you have to find ways to be able to deploy him to where he's going to have opportunities to make plays and where he can be opportunistic and take chances because he has the athleticism to make up for any mistake that he makes. Like Julian Blackmon is elite, man. He's very elite. It's just not available. So, with all that said, I wouldn't be surprised if this is also a move that's happening because Julian Blackmon is on the trade market. Okay, if he is traded soon, I would not be surprised because he's not being played with the starters. He could just be eased back in from his injury. But I think with Nick Cross being in the starting lineup and us signing two safeties to add to the depth, the writing's on the wall for Julian Blackmon to be gone. And I hope that I'm wrong, but if it happens, remember who told you that Julian Blackmon's going to be gone soon, because it just feels like that with everything that's happened and with his ability. You can get at least decent value back in return for him for everything that he's put on tape. But it won't be what it should because he's not always available. So, with that said, that's going to wrap up training camp practice 11 recap. And again, the next couple training camp practices are 6 to 8 p.m. on Wednesday and Thursday. So those videos I'll actually be putting out on Thursday and Friday morning. So make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you get notified when those videos drop. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.